All right, all right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. It is your buddy CJ here. And tonight, we're talking about all things automotive industry, the car guy hobby, gearhead stuff, cars. You know this is the place to be for that real gearhead talk. Real gearhead talk. Guys, welcome back to all of my subscribers. If you're new around here, welcome. Give me a like and subscribe. Around here, we talk about cars, automotive enthusiast topics. And tonight, listen, we got a special topic. Let's get right into it. Guys, your buddy CJ, listen, I've done a lot of things over the years. I've had an incredible career that's taken me all over the globe, done all kinds of things, and I am a car guy. You know your buddy CJ as a car guy. But the most important thing I've ever done, being serious here for a moment, listen, we have fun around here, but I got to be serious. The most important job I've ever had, and the most important title is that of dad, father, right? I raised my kids, right? And I think we did a pretty good job raising kids. And it was just a wonderful adventure. And in all seriousness, tonight's episode's a little bit different in that we're still talking about a car-related topic. But specifically, I want to talk about good choices for parents to make for first cars for their kids. And then also some bad choices. How to avoid the bad choices for first cars and how to make a good choice, in my opinion. Now, listen, like anything else on this channel, you know your buddy CJ is going to share his sincere, honest opinion. Guys, if you disagree with me, if you got other point of view, or if you agree with me, leave those comments. You know your buddy CJ responds to all the comments that I can, and I just love hearing from you, and we have a lot of fun around here. But guys, first things first, what I want to say is, when I think about all the years of raising kids, one of the things, a scary moment as the kids are going through their phases, a scary moment is when they start driving, real talk. Like, suddenly they go from playing with toys and riding bikes to they're driving cars. They're going to get their driver's license. And every parent has a level of fear and apprehension and concern. Of course you do. It is only natural. Okay? It is only natural. And you want to do the right thing. And the other thing I'll say is kids are kids, right? And kids going to want something fun and cool, right? And they want to impress their peers. And listen, the automotive enthusiast hobby for this next generation is not quite what it was in my observation. It's not as pervasive. There are many kids today who don't want to get their license at 16. They're not thinking about it at 14, 15 like many of us were. I'm a Gen Xer, right? And it was a big deal. Gen Xers, even millennials, I think for the most part, it was a big deal to get your driver's license. But Gen Z, the younger folks, in my observation, the younger kids, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be. Do you guys agree? That's my observation for most of the kids. Nonetheless, thousands and thousands of kids right now are contemplating and pressuring their parents as we talk because they want to get their driver's license and they want to get a cool car and they want to take it to school and they want to go out with their friends. So, that coming of age period is a rite of passage, and it is a phase for kids and for parents and for families. And I want to talk very specifically tonight about kind of how you manage that. I'm going to give you 3 examples of awful cars that, is this thing on? 3 vehicles you should not buy as the first vehicle for your kid. And I will tell you why, in my opinion. And then I'll give you 3 examples of what I consider to be good options for first cars for kids. And I'll tell you why I believe that to be the case. Before we get into it, I want to tell you guys a story. When I was 14, 15, I was working, I was cutting grass, I was washing dishes at a local deli, I was babysitting, I was doing all kinds of things, raking leaves, saving up. And the big thing for me, I wanted to get my driver's license. I wanted to get a car. And all my friends and my buddies, we were into muscle cars and performance cars and all these things, right? We're going back to the 80s. Your buddy CJ is a Gen Xer. And of course, in my mind, I wanted this really cool performance car. I wanted a Monte Carlo SS. I wanted a Grand National. I wanted a Camaro. Yeah, that wasn't happening. My father wasn't having it. God bless my father for looking out for me, and he cared, right? He did want me to get my license. He was supportive. His big thing was he was not letting me get a V8 engine. He wanted me to get a V6, okay? And back then, you got to understand, we didn't have the high output V6s back then. Like if you had a General Motors car, like a Monte Carlo, Oldsmobile Cutlass, something like that, Pontiac Grand Prix, Buick Regal, with that base V6, 3.8 liter, yeah, they were sleds. They were not performance cars. You could still get yourself into trouble with any vehicle, but these were not high performance vehicles. And that's what my father actually encouraged me to get, was something like a Monte Carlo or a Cutlass. I ended up with a 1983 Pontiac Grand Prix with that 3.8 liter V6, and it worked out. The car was not powerful. The car was not fast. The car had like 130 horsepower or something like that, could barely accelerate going up hills. Why do I share that story? Because fast forward to 2025, everything is fast. Okay? 250, 300 horsepower is nothing. Toyota Camrys have that. Okay? You know, you've got some very fast, quick, powerful cars out there with V6s, with 4 cylinders. We'll talk about EVs in a moment. So everything's got power today, right? All the modern cars, for the most part. And, that's putting it certainly doesn't reduce the level of risk. If anything, it increases the risk. Young driver, powerful car, that just increases probability and magnitude of something bad happening. Okay? And as a parent, you're risk adverse. And I want to help you make some right decisions while also, encouraging our kids to do something, and something that they can, take pride in and have fun with in terms of their own car. So let's get right into it. I want to start out with 3 bad examples of cars that you should not buy for your 15, 16, 17-year-old. Let's get right into it. The Jeep. I got to tell you, Jeep Wrangler Unlimited is not a good choice for a first car for a young driver. Parents out there, let me tell you, stay away from the Jeep Wrangler. I will tell you why. These do not handle real well, okay? They have reasonably powerful engines, somewhere around 300 horsepower. The vehicle is more structured around being sort of a fun lifestyle vehicle than something that is safe and basic transportation. They ride high, okay? They don't handle real well in a situation where you have to react quickly, okay? They do have a higher center of gravity. Stay away from the Jeep Wrangler as a first vehicle for your kid, in my opinion. Later on, when they've got some experience, if they want to go ahead and get into that, the whole fun image, the Jeep lifestyle, what have you, fine, if that's what they're going to do. But, parents, if your kids are pressuring you to think about getting something like a Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, don't do it. I claim the fun factor is actually a distraction. Real talk. I'm going to say it, and maybe it's unpopular. The fun factor for your high school aged kid that they really want, the cool factor, will actually be a distraction for them. Okay? And we do not want a distraction. I don't want your kid to stand out and to be part of the Jeep culture and have that whole thing going when they're trying to establish basic command of how to drive and be safe and responsible on the road. Okay? It's just not a good mix. It adds an additional layer coupled with the high center of gravity, the 300 horsepower V6 or whatever it is, the fact that it doesn't handle real well in reactive situations at speed, going around corners when you might need it the most. There can be a real false sense of security. That's the other thing. Putting a Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, in the hands of a new driver, basically a teenager, can potentially give that young person a real false sense of security, when in fact, this is not a great handling vehicle for an inexperienced driver. So Jeep Wrangler or Wrangler Unlimited is on your buddy CJ's list of vehicles not to buy for the new driver in your household. Let's keep going. Guys, are we having fun tonight or what? We always have fun, regardless of what we're talking about. And tonight, not so much a serious topic, but one that's hopefully useful. Parents, for a first vehicle, Dodge Charger, Dodge Challenger, out of the question. Don't do it. Stay away from a Dodge Charger, Dodge Challenger for a first vehicle for the teenager in your family. And I will tell you why. Number one, there's a certain aspect of performance culture that is associated with these cars, and I have nothing against that. I'm a performance car guy. Like, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but honestly, you don't want to encourage your kids to participate in that and give them sort of an entrance into that at 16 years old, or as a new driver, 16, 17 years old. I am telling you, whether you want to hear it or not, or if anybody hasn't told you, I will tell you like it is, as I always do. If your kids are pushing for a Dodge Charger or Dodge Challenger, red flag. Like, the whole point of getting one of these is that even in V6 trim, these are powerful, fast cars. And the image and the culture that your kid will be going for by wanting a vehicle like this, I'm going to be blunt, and it might turn some people off because it's the truth, is that they could get themselves in some trouble, people. And I've seen it time and time again. My advice to you as a parent and as a car guy who's risk adverse when it comes to young people and teenagers, stay away from like Dodge Charger, Dodge Challenger. There's just a whole vibe that's associated with these, which involves, in some cases, I hate to say it, reckless driving. So my advice tonight, my message, is not necessarily to 15 and 16 and 17-year-old kids to try to tell you not to want a Dodge Charger and Dodge Challenger. Your buddy CJ was a kid once, and I wanted the craziest cars on the road. I'm talking to your parents tonight. From one experienced parent who's raised his kids already to other parents, stay away from like a Dodge Charger, Dodge Challenger. They are performance cars, not at the highest level, but that's the whole vibe with these. And I don't want to see your kids get caught up in street racing or takeovers or reckless driving. Stay the heck out of that. Don't encourage it by giving your kids one of these cars. It's just not a great idea. All right, guys, let's keep going. Do you agree with me? Come on, let me know what you think. Leave me those comments. You know your buddy CJ loves to hear from you. Come on, guys, let's keep going. What do we got next? So, next car on my list of vehicles to avoid as first cars for teenagers, it's this Toyota Scion thing. Listen, I'm going to say any sports car is probably not a good idea. Stay away. I want your kids, your young teenage drivers, to focus on the basics of safety and good behaviors and good driving techniques and mastering the road, right? By encouraging them, this kind of goes along with my earlier point, by encouraging them to get their feet wet into sort of the performance, sporty, and fun car market, you're, without saying it, and I don't care if folks don't want to hear this, you're encouraging performance driving and that kind of spirited driving, fast driving, reckless driving. You're basically opening the book for that for your teenager. And you may not believe it because you say, not my kid, CJ. Listen, I'm a realist. The best thing you can do is stay away from sports cars for your young people. And I see people make this mistake all the time. They get like the sporty, zippy little two-door car. And next thing you know, the kid's got tickets and the kid loses their license and all these things. And the insurance is going through the roof. Listen, stay away from sports cars. I'm not picking on the Toyota FRS Scion, whatever the heck it is. But whether it's a Miata or, whatever, Supra, anything, Camaro, stay away from sports cars as first cars for young people. And that's coming from a guy who loves performance cars. But I am not a fan of putting our kids in harm's way. And it's bad enough, right, that we hold our breath as parents, right, when the 16-year-old starts driving, or even when they get their learner's permit at 15 in some cases, and then they're driving and they're commuting and they're off to college. These are just, for an inexperienced driver, not a great place to start. And I'm going to give you some examples of cars to start with, but it's certainly not this little sports car. Just not a good thing to introduce your kids to as their first vehicles, in my view. Guys, let's keep going. I'm going to give you one more example of something to stay away from, and I think it's important that we talk about this. So, Tesla Model 3, not a good choice for a first car for a new driver. And it's not just the Tesla Model 3. I'll say generally any EV, you know, for the most part, these EVs, have extremely high torque and acceleration capabilities. These cars can get away from you. Okay. And if you've never driven an EV, mom and dad out there, don't be fooled. If your young person tells you, well, I just want a Model 3, the basic, these cars can accelerate very quickly. And they are not sports cars or performance cars, really. But I will tell you that it can be a lot. It can be a lot for a young person to manage. And then there's the whole component of, regenerative braking that you have to get used to. And this whole concept of charging and range. What I would encourage for your young person, your teenager, kids in your household, let them master the basics of an internal combustion engine car or a hybrid or whatever that doesn't have performance aspects, rapid acceleration, ridiculous 0 to 60, high torque out of the gate. Let them get the basics down first. If their second or third car is an EV, it's a Tesla Model 3 or whatever, okay, maybe they're ready for it then. But my word of caution is eyes wide open. If your kid's really pushing for like a Tesla Model 3, something like this, and I'm not picking on Tesla by any means, but something like this, do your homework. These cars accelerate rapidly, okay? There's some unique aspects to driving them, the regenerative braking, etc. It's all cool stuff, but they handle and drive a bit different than a regular internal combustion engine vehicle. And I don't want to see your kid get in a tough situation. My opinion, stay away from the EVs for a first vehicle. Let's master the basics first. Now, tonight, now that I've given you some guidance on things to stay away from, parents, for your first cars, for your young people, your young drivers in your household, let's talk about what I consider to be some good choices. So, let's get right to it. So, basic transportation, okay? The most basic transportation for a teenager, a new driver in your household, teenagers as they start driving, basic transportation rules the day. Something that's not terribly powerful, something that's reasonably safe, okay? Something with some size, something that's substantial, something that's somewhat forgiving, bit more of a lumbering ride. Get yourself a used Camry. These Camrys, they're mid-sized sedans, okay? Basic trim level. I think these make for good first cars. It is basic transportation. I'm not telling you to go out and buy a brand new Camry for your kid with the TRD performance package or whatever. No, I'm telling you to get a nice used Camry, with the basic option packages, just something that easy to drive, basic, average performance, kind of lumbering, safe. Okay. It's also, it's not an image car. It's not a performance car. It's not something that's a distraction where everybody's going to be encouraging the kid to go, 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 race. Let's see what it can do. Listen, maybe the kid will get made fun of that you have a very conservative car. I'm okay with that. And they need to be okay with that. And they need to understand, right, that your primary concern is for your kid's safety, okay? And for their own development to become a solid driver and establish command of the basics. Toyota Camry's a good choice, moms and dads out there. All right, let's keep going, guys. And by the way, leave me those comments if you agree, if you disagree, if you think there's other examples of really good first cars, let me know. These are just my humble opinions, and I always love to hear from you guys. Keep those questions coming too, whether it's on Instagram, Hot Seat Gearheads, or here on YouTube. We have a lot of fun, and I love talking to you guys all the time, week in, week out. Guys, here's another example. Ford Explorer, and for many years, the most popular SUV, certainly in North America. There are a lot of these out there. in basic trim, such as XLS or XLT. They're not huge on performance or horsepower. You can get two-wheel drive versions or all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive versions. They're not terribly expensive. I'd say they're reasonably forgiving. They're reasonably safe. Okay, it is a larger vehicle, so you want to make sure that your kid can handle a larger vehicle, right? I think there's also some utility here if they're going to take it and go away to college with it, that type of thing. But I claim that basic Ford Explorer, I'm not talking about a limited or an ST with the performance engine and all those things. I'm talking about a used, low to moderately spec'd Ford Explorer makes for a good first vehicle for someone. If your kid is someone who can manage and is comfortable with driving a larger vehicle. Not all the kids are, so this may or may not be a good fit, but I think for your kid who's interested in an SUV, or maybe they say they really want a Jeep, you say, look, I'm not getting you the Jeep Wrangler for a bunch of reasons. Let's start out with a basic Ford Explorer, something like that, safe, large, not terribly, not a terribly high-powered vehicle. Get you started, get you going. It's got really good visibility, in my view. Ford Explorer. It doesn't cost a lot to own, and God knows there's a lot of these out there. Parents, could be a good choice for your kid. Okay, guys, I'm going to give you one more because we could do this all night and have a lot of fun doing it. But I just wanted to come on here and give you a few, and then, with really focused more on the principles and the line of thinking than giving you an exhaustive list. But here's another one, right? Chevrolet Impala or the Malibu. They eventually stopped making the Impala, and then eventually they made the Malibu for a couple of years, which was essentially same size or a little bit larger, I think, than the Impala. Everything that I like about this Chevy Impala or Malibu aligns with what I said about the Toyota Camry. As a first vehicle for a teenage driver, basic transportation, something like a Chevy Impala 4-door or the Chevy Malibu, could be a good choice. Basic transportation, it's safe, it's not terribly overpowered. I'm talking about the low trim model spec of this vehicle. Could be a really good, dare I say, lower cost first vehicle for the teenage driver in your house. And again, these cars aren't really known to have a huge following for automotive enthusiasts or performance drivers. So it'll kind of keep them out of some of that and just keep them focused on the basics. We want to encourage our young people, our teenagers, to stay focused on the basics, mastering the driving and safety before they're distracted. And God knows we don't need more distractions, mobile phones, etc., texts, all these things. Young people are already like the rest of us, right? There's like sensory overload with distractions. I'm saying, because I care, I'd like to see us minimize the distractions as much as possible, including the vehicle that we choose for our teenage drivers and our new drivers in our house. Give them something basic where they're not wrapped up in an image or performance culture or any of that stuff. We're focused on safety and the basics. Give them a basic car. It's a good idea, folks. So wanted to come on here and say, share this. A couple other things. I was talking to a guy recently who told me that he taught all of his kids how to drive with a manual transmission. And in fact, one of his kids started out with a manual transmission vehicle. I say trudge that road lightly. Don't just assume that your kid is ready for the complexity of a manual transmission or a straight drive, as it's known in certain areas of the country. That's a lot to add when you're already focused on the basics of safety and rules of the road and all of those things and managing that, learning how to drive. Not a lot of kids, I'm just going to be blunt, not a lot of kids are ready for the 3 pedals and managing hills and downshifting and rev matching and backing up with a manual transmission vehicle. It's not for everybody, number one, and it's not for every teenager. So while I get it when someone says to me, CJ, I want my kids to be able to drive anything, I agree. I think that's a fantastic objective. I'm just not sure it's the best choice for your kid for their first vehicle. Okay? My first vehicle wasn't manual. Oh, God, I got to tell you that story. I learned to drive manual on a motorcycle in Daytona Beach, Florida. And then I ended up driving my first manual vehicle, and I did it successfully at like 19 years old. I drove it all over Daytona. I drove that car having only learned to drive manual on a motorcycle. So that was my experience at 19 years old. And then I, whatever, had other manual vehicles and motorcycles and stuff and trucks. Oh, God, so many stories. But my first vehicle was not manual. And listen, I think I learned, and my kids their first vehicles weren't manual either. So, guys, just wanted to come on here and share some thoughts. What do you think? Others out there who've raised kids or are currently raising kids, do you have a different opinion? Did you have different success? Or do you have other warnings for parents out there? Any other questions, comments? Your buddy CJ loves to hear from you, but I'm going to leave it at that. Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. We have fun around here. Tonight is no exception. Guys, until I see you on the next one, peace.